No, it's actually kind of nice. My back isn't bothering me so much. I actually feel like I'm capable of streaming. It's good. It's really, really good. I'll be honest, the last couple days it's been a little hectic. Will say, for the most part, though, my back is not bothering me. But that could just also be because the pills I'm on. They're definitely helping. They're nothing too crazy. They're just basically giant Aleve. Alright. Fussing around. Let's get to it. You know what would be actually a fun thing to kind of do? Like in hindsight and looking back on it and everything, is if I actually went through and like compiled all the VODs for my streaming stuff or the Arcane Chronicles, so we have like an omnibus of like every stream. But like if I look and see how many are just dedicated purely to writing, I got a feeling it's kind of up there. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna lie to you. I feel like I feel like it's up there, number-wise. I gotta remember where we were at left in the document. So, let's see here. Not that far. Something I didn't take account for. While doing this is that the titles of everything would get moved around due to like editing lines and all that. So like episode 3's title was in the wrong spot. Episode 2's title, I think, is in a good spot. All right. Hope you all are doing well today. Let's get some music going. Gotta remember where we're at. I think we were at the part where Dakota left Violet Rose. So I think we were here. Yeah, we were here. Yeah, before we get reading, I do hope you all are well today. I mentioned it earlier before we actually officially went live that my back is doing somewhat better. Still hurts a little bit, especially if I like move the wrong way, but that's all manageable. You know, I got this painkiller that's really, really nice. It's just basically glorified Aleve, but it's definitely alleviating my symptoms, which I am cool with. Hello, chum. How you doing, friend? Hope you're doing well today. We're resuming where we left off yesterday for reading in the Arcane Chronicles. We are partway through chapter 2 right now. But I was just doing a little bit of housekeeping before we got going. Been talking to myself. Talking about myself too much? Like to others? Because I don't feel like you've been doing that here. I know how it feels to get self-conscious about that, though, so I get that. Alright, let me see here. Probably to others, but they can't sense it. Yeah, that's fair. You tend to be your own worst critic about that stuff, though, too, so don't be too harsh on yourself. Oh, limes. Was it because we were talking about foods? Limes? Is that why you're very, very hungry? Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness, I need to stretch. Oh, man. Yes, it was. I mean, I do know how to cook some pretty good food. Also, a little petty, but I was told today that I said hey and LOL too. I feel that. Like, hey, listen. Also, I gotta adjust my fan on my desk. Power bill is expensive, y'all. Let's see here. We were at... Yeah, I do hope you guys are doing well today, though. Reason that I didn't allow conversation. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of hard to reply to somebody going LOL. You know, like, it is one of the hardest things to reply to in a text conversation. We're almost where we left off with. Like, it's crazy. We're almost at 40,000 words for this. We're only like... We're at, like, chapters. I feel like that's pretty good, though, because technically we're 4 chapters in. Each chapter is about 10,000 words. I don't think that's bad, is it? I feel like that's pretty good. Averages. Oh, I do get that, but also, what else can I say when you're mostly comment? Like, yeah. Laughing so hard, Gills. I know, I get that. Headbats! Headbats, we love headbats. Love headbats. Love headbats. No, it is kind of like... It's hard, because it, like, when you receive it, it's like... Maybe it's because, like, I look into, like, text messaging too much. But there's many a conversation that's just stopped on my end because LOL is said, where it's like they don't want to add more input to what else you said to them in the first place. Like, the best way I could describe it would be like talking about something that happened at work. And then as I'm talking about the thing that happened at work, my friend group, I just get an LOL back. You know, it's like, could we not say something more? Could we not have, like... And like, wow, that was crazy. So what else happened? Or like continue the conversation and asking a question. Like, it feels more like a conversation ender depending on the person that's receiving it versus like the actual thing, though. So it could just be, okay, you me. It could just easily be one of those things where it's just like, yeah, That's another thing. That's also like a conversation ender, you know? So, look, talking is hard. I get that. I get that 100%. Like, if anyone else knows that talking is hard, it's me. It's just, like, one of the things I went to school for well, I say went to school for, but when I was in high school, one of the things that my English class did was it taught at a college level, but not to an official degree, but kind of in the way of, like, having a way to conduct conversation and having continuing thoughts, and like having your thoughts played out in your mind before you go to talk, to limit how many times you go, like, you know, those filler words where basically your mouth is moving faster than what your brain can stimulate for you to say. So with how that has been accumulated in my life, is it's led to a more acute awareness of conversation topics and like how to keep conversation flowing with people, and when talking about things, like explaining how to do things at work, you know, offering questions, things to help improve and carry on the discussion. But you know, LOL was one of those. I wouldn't say rude. They aloof is a word that comes to mind, because rude would be more dismissive, and you're clearly not being dismissive. You know, it's just, it's hard to continue a conversation when there's no good way for you to continue the conversation when not given something else to build off of. It's not being a matter of rude, it's just they don't know what to do next if they're only given an LOL to work off of. You know, like, I'm trying to think of a good example, because the problem is like coming up with an example of this on the spot is hard without being hyper specific. And that's kind of part of the problem, is like, if I was to tell you something that happened at work today, I'm just telling you something that happened at work today. That's not like necessarily me trying to continue a conversation, if that makes sense. It's just this, you raise the question, this is what happened at work today, and I tell you something that happened at work today, and then you go, okay, that was cool. So then it would be on my onus to then also be like, after you reply to that, to be like, yeah, well, how was your day? What happened at work? Anything cool? Anything exciting? And if you just say, yeah, no, nothing really happened, or you have nothing to add to it, that's where it gets a little, you know what I mean? It's hard to explain without having like a proper conversation in front of me, right? Like, if I was to like do a slight detour here and write out a conversation, like, let's go to a conversation we have here, right? Like right here. And we got a conversation here where we got several lines of Alray and Dakota talking about why the gangs are looking to go legit and have more like upper district help. So like, you know, in writing, it's really easy to do because you're controlling both sides of the conversation. But when you're talking with people, you're only controlling what you can say and how you respond to what people say. So it's hard for some people to be able to continue a conversation from being left on a LOL or a haha or an okay. Because they don't have they're misinterpreting a social cue, not because of like they're inept or anything like that, but sometimes it's just hard to read what a social cue is given in a situation when they can't infer what to do next. So yeah, people have an issue with like somebody saying like LOL, having a hard time replying to them because of that. And it is something that I struggle with, because typically I'm used to thinking that, like, I'll be transparent and honest, my interests in my friend group are some of the most least interesting things to them, because of like just what I like and what I enjoy in music and all that. I have a very niche music taste, as far as like, I like power metal. I'm the only one in my friend group that likes power metal. So like when I get excited about like a new Camelot song or new Glory Hammer song, none of my friends care. So when I say, hey, there's a new Glory Hammer song out, it's pretty good, I'll usually get hit with like an okay. So then like I infer from that conversation that, yeah, just Glory Hammer doesn't matter to them as like it does to me, you know, and I don't take that personally, because there are things that they're interested in that I just do not care for whatsoever. Sports is a good example of that. Like my one friend group, they'll talk about sports and I'll just be like, absolutely do not care. This is so just something I'm not interested in. And I'll do my best to still engage in conversation because I don't want to be perceived as rude or be perceived as like blunt or whatever. But I do struggle when talking about things that I'm just not interested in, like sports, for example. I think that's kind of, I don't know if I've ever actually watched snail racing in a capacity where it was meant to be taken as like a hyper-specific conversation about like, oh, Johnny 7 is the best snail racer ever because of the fact his shell is more aerodynamic, you know? I can't say I've ever seen a snail race though either, so. You have a snail named Jared? I do get it though. Maybe I'm just being stubborn because, like, yeah, having no social stimulation in the regards of like, you know, I spend a lot of my time online, right? I spend a lot. Oh no, poor Jared. He got taken by a bird. That sucks. But like me, for example, like most of my free time, like everything's too expensive to do, so I don't go out and like watch movies unless it's like a movie I'm really interested in watching. Like I really want to watch the new Spider-Man movie. Like I'm okay with watching that when it comes to streaming on like Disney Plus, but I really want to watch the new Spider-Man movie because Spider-Man's one of my favorite superheroes. And from what I've heard, people are absolutely loving this Spider-Man movie. They think it's a really good return to form. So it's like, yeah, I want to watch that. Plus, Keith David is in there, and I love my boy Keith David. I will be heartbroken when Keith David passes away. But apparently he's in the movie. I'm very curious to see where he's at. But yeah, like I don't go to like concerts often. I don't go like out to just bars for the sake of going to bars. I do tend to stay in my apartment. I'm either at work, at home, or at my family and friend's house. That's it. Yeah. And that just could just be purely because of just a fact of how your life is. You know, it's not bad to have those be your only replies, but from the perspective of somebody that's like wanting to engage in conversation, it is hard to find a stimulating way to conduct a conversation when those are kind of like the answers that you're given. But it's also just a matter of like people can also just do better too. Yeah. And it's hard to sound interested in things you're just not interested in. Like it's really hard. You know, there's certain things that I have absolutely zero interest in, but I still talk about it because I know that's a conversation that coworkers like to have. Like, I know nothing about sports. So when my coworkers want to talk about sports stuff, I ask questions because it's like, I really don't know who this guy is. What does he do? Okay, I don't know what a tight end does. I know what a tight end means in other things, but in sports, it's like, I got nothing, chief. I'm assuming it's like the guy on the end of the line, but yeah. Like, it's the intent that you're doing is obvious, that you're not wanting to like end the conversation, but people aren't perceiving it anything more as in that. And that's where they're having their issues from. It's a matter of them just not being able to infer or continue on from your okay or your LOL or your I don't know. Like, hey. Like, when there's somebody I want to talk to and I go, hey, what's up? How you doing? And all I get back in reply is a hey, it's like, okay, they just don't want to talk to me right now. Okay, that's fine, whatever. I'll move on. But like if I go hey to them first and they go hey to me and I go what's up, how you doing, what you doing, something like that, then it's like, then if they reply like a one-worded answer, then it's like, oh yeah, they really don't want to talk right now. Now that may not be the case, but that's just how I'm inferring it, because that's how I've always kind of like I'm one of the worst people out of my friend group for like talking with in like a group setting, or like in groups of like 3 or 4, because I just enjoy listening to conversations more so than I do being a part of them, which is kind of funny considering like what we're doing here is me just yapping about my very specific hyper fixation, which is writing this book for a Twitch character. Like, I don't mean to be mean, and I'm not trying to call out my friends, but there's only maybe 2 or 3 of my friends that actually want me to continue doing this. And it's not for any like nefarious reason. They're just more so like, dude, you don't want to waste your time doing this because it's not going to go anywhere. And it's like, I'm not wasting my time, but when you don't want to play games, this is something that I started doing, and lo and behold, now it's to the point where I'm making money off of this, even if it's not a lot. I'm gonna continue doing it. And I'll put it on hold when you guys want to do anything, but it's like, let me know when you want to do something. I'm free to do stuff whenever. Just say the word, and I'll hang out and do stuff with you. But then it's like I never get hear a word back, so it's like, well, then yeah, I'm just going to default to doing this. And I think that's a kind of the same mind with how you're handling your, things that you're dealing with. No, like, chum. Part of this whole like streaming, writing, and talking thing, it's not a matter of writing. Like, I even said today, it's like we're reading. I'm reading through the rest of the Arcane Chronicles today, and then we're going to start actually like building the world. This is still a conversation we're having. I'm not annoyed. If I sound annoyed, I'm sorry. That's not my intent. But we're having a conversation, and I'm cool with that. That's part of the reason why I'm like doing this live. So part of this though is like, I don't want people that come here to feel like I'm ignoring them or like trying to belittle them in a way where it's like I'm being rude. I'm genuinely wanting to engage in conversation. And the conversation topic was that, so that's what we were working on. And like, look, don't get me wrong. You're just really excited to make dinner for your boyfriend. And I can't blame you for that, because believe it or not, having that much time to prepare dinner is really good, because it gives you time to make sure that you have everything you need, like utensil wise, silverware wise, dish wise, so on and so forth. Like, if you need new pots, if you need new pans, if you need new cutting boards, so on and so forth. But yeah, no, chum, I do enjoy you being here and like giving conversation topic and your ideas. I mean, shoot, you helped build the identity of one of the main characters of this series. And so, like, without your input, we wouldn't have Azatera as she is, So, I'm more than okay with you guys wanting to talk and have conversations. For me, this is for you guys as much as it is for me to actually just work on this. And like, I'll be honest, I've not really been wanting to play games live because I've been wanting just to write, The last game I wanted to play live was Halo Campaign Evolved Remake. And I'm okay with, if we want to go do that, like next time we go live, sure, I'll do that. Play some more games, but this has just kind of been my focus right now. Yeah, talking in a game is a lot easier to do than just when you're reading or writing. But I don't want it to feel like I'm ignoring you guys, because that's just rude. I don't want to ignore you guys. I mean, you're taking time out of your free time to spend time with me. Like, why would I be mad about that? I'll be honest, I had a moment of weakness there and just kind of wanted to let something that's been on my chest off my chest for a while there. So I do apologize that you guys had to receive the brunt of it. But I'll be honest, I'm not the best with talking with other people. I'm not the best at handling things of this nature, because I just default to, okay, well, they just didn't want to do anything today. Whereas it's like, I also don't like always being the one to ask, hey, do we want to do something? And then just be like, told no. Oh, sorry about that. But yeah, we can get to reading. Speaking of reading, it had been quite a few months since Reagan had been back out of his hideout as he tugged the tattered and worn jacket over his figure. There was no way he could hide his size from onlookers, but at the very least he could disguise himself as a larger animal kin. All this effort just to keep people from making the connection that he was the dreaded bloodsmith from last year. The secrecy annoyed Reagan as he yearned to just be able to go out on the prowl and strike fear into the hearts of these civilians once more. Make himself feel all the more powerful. Price to pay for being a modern-day vampire lord, he supposes, as such a being should be revered as one among the ranks of the judges of this world. Rights denied me, he thought to himself as he felt so lowly having to walk among the cattle. Oh, nice. What kind of free stuff did you get, chum? He softly groaned as he saw that there was barely any elbow room on the sidewalk before giving up on blending into the crowd technique he had been perfecting. He darted his way into an alley and looked to see if anyone was watching, before he brought himself airborne with a soft, hushed word. He soared up the side of the building, relishing in the brief sensation of wind nipping against his face. He effortlessly scaled over the structure. The vampire lord was pleased with his powers returning to full force after so long of surviving off dregs. The dregs. I died. Ow! Painting by numbers, painting a gaming chair. Ooh, a gaming chair. Very nice. Also, thank you for the chair, Diamond. That was painful. Painting by numbers painting. Oh, that's like one of them, it like tells you where to put like certain colors at because of like the chunks of the art are like numbered sections. Yeah, those are really, really cool. Well done. Food is also a really good thing to get for free, so long as it's not rotten. Vampire Lord was pleased with his powers returning to full force after so long of surviving off the dregs of blood bags. The occasional rodent. As he hovered above the tall building for a moment, he made sure he was still unseen before setting himself down on the rooftop. The wind seemingly heeded his call as it helped him land safely onto the rooftop with barely any noise. I feel like we don't need the onto the rooftop. Safely. The wind seemingly heeded his call as it helped him land safely with barely any noise. Perfection. Those fools would be smart not to challenge me now, he said softly to himself as he gathered his surroundings. Also, Dotman, I hope you're doing well today, buddy. I feel like my nose is going to explode. The issue with his plan now was that he spent all this time in the eyes of girls on the street level to find his way to his objective. So being on the rooftops was not a way he felt he knew. His objective, though, was near the tallest building in outside of this district. It should be outside of this district, because he is at the aqueducts. The Violet knows. So, once he found that, the rest should be a cakewalk. As long as that cursed mutt didn't show himself. Not that he couldn't handle Dakota, the last thing he wanted to do was to have another run-in with that mutt where it could delay him from his objective. Tonight, he could not be late for his important date, as tonight was the night he took over the Red Banks camp. it was the night he took over the Red Vein. The gang wasn't the strongest in New. I think we don't know that. Strongest in New Albany, but they fit his motives better than the other gang. Hand. Purple Hand. The Red Vein specialized in material handling and smuggling jobs, which meant a constant flow. Ooh, building the chair right now? Ooh, good luck. Word of advice, do not lose the tool if your chair came with a tool to build it with, because if you go to take that chair apart, you're going to want that tool. Where was I? The gang wasn't the strongest in New Albany, but they fit his motives better than the Purple Hand. They fit his motives better than the Purple Hand. The Red Vein specialized in material handling and smuggling jobs, which meant a constant flow of funds and the ability to spread his influence over vast distances in the city. Naturally, his vampiric side loved the idea of having a network all throughout the city where all information was at his fingertips. Not being a proper part of the Postman, did cut him off from one of the biggest sources of information in the entire city, the Postman data hoard. I feel like that needs to be the different hoard. Do a quick little share. Ah, yes, we need the other hoard here. Alright. Reagan did use that quite to his advantage before the split from the Postman properly. Having whatever data he could have siphoned off saved to his own devices so he could have a gauge of where VIPs, HVTs, caches of Postman tech, hidden bunkers, and the like were throughout the city. What happened, Limes? Brr. Way to go, Limes. Hopefully it's not too late to book it for tomorrow. I feel like we can rewrite this. Freaking did use that to quite... to his advantage before he split from the Postman properly. Having whatever data he could siphoned. Having siphoned off whatever data he could have, he saved it to his own devices so he could have a gauge of whereabouts. Oh, it's only 11:30. Yeah, I don't know if he'd be able to do that. Oh, never mind. Oh. Well, there you go. Thank you for the alert, Dotmint. See you in a bit, buddy. Well, that's good. What kind of restaurant is it? Saved devices so he could have a gauge of where the whereabouts for VIPs and HIVTs. HVTs. Along with those, he would have the older locations of catches of postman tech, hidden bunkers, and safe houses that were. Along with those, he would have the older locations of catches, postman tech, hidden bunkers, and safe houses. Granted, Reagan knew the likelihood of this information still being accurate was highly unlikely, and he also figured that these places would have systems set up to catch him given his history and what he did to the postman as a whole. That's where his thralls. That's where his thralls would have. That's where his thralls have come in, helping him be aware of everything going on. Making thrall was something he had no idea he could do, and it proved to be a very handy little power. He, of course, had obtained the ability to make thrall through his vampiric splicing, but through the studying more of what vampire lords could do was how he unlocked it. He wondered what other powers would come to him through study and practice, but he couldn't practice in his worn-out building of a hideout anymore, as he needed more space and test subjects. That's where the secondary nature of taking over the Red Veins would come in. He needed the massed group of willing foot soldiers to not only be able to have a crew to carry out his objectives, but also to be able to have a merry gaggle of men for his tests on what all he could do as a vampire. Feels like it's written weirdly. That was where the secondary nature of taking over the Red Veins would come in. He needed the massed group of willing foot soldiers to not only be able to have a crew, what counts as gossip? That is a great question, though. I'm not entirely sure what defines gossip anymore. My definition of gossip has been skewed because of like my time in that church I was in. Gossip meeting. Specifically according to like the Merriam-Webster dictionary, it's things about like rumors or information about the behavior of or personal lives of other people. So like an example would be like the private nature of like my life, right? Like you could gossip about what I would do in my personal time alone, like what I do on days where I'm not streaming, or like on the occasional thing like that. Like you're talking about like what Taylor Swift's into right now or something like that. Another one is like a person who habitually reveals the personality or sensational facts about other people. But yeah, gossip, that's like it is a noun, and then as a verb, it is to, just like you're talking of, like you're revealing secrets of other people. Because when the hey thing happened. Oh, because when the hey thing happened, I basically had told some people about it and they thought it was a little ridiculous. Yeah. But people are going to interpret things how they hear it first before like actually understanding. So that was where the secondary nature of taking over the Red Veins would come in. He needed the mass group of willing foot soldiers to not carry out objectives. Also have a merry gaggle of men for Pests. I feel like that. Ah, okay. Yeah, no, gossip is like, it can be mean, but it can also just be very neutral. Like, you could just be gossiping without, like, intently realizing that you are gossiping because you're just telling somebody that, someone something that you know of somebody. But yeah, that's typically, it is viewed in a negative light for the most part. Excuse me. Yeah. It tends to be some, like, it's a very easy conversation topic. Talking gossip. That was where the secondary nature taking out the red veins would come. He needed the mass group of willing foot soldiers to help him not only carry out his objectives, but also to be able to have a merry gaggle of men for him to hunt Tesson. Tesson, when all he was a vampire. Oh, we're gonna hear some tea. You're gonna share some tea with us. Having paused in his own thoughts for a moment, taking a predatory look over the city around him, Regan breathed in deeply and sighed out in a low chuckle. He guessed he could gamble being seen. The engine softly hummed as Dakota let the Omni vehicle wind down before parking into one of the many parking garages in the middle districts of New Albany. Despite the affordability of parking here, he always hated leaving his car in one of these interior lots. Dakota wished. Not separate paragraph? It was not. It just had an odd spot to page break. Huh. Dakota wished he could have left his vehicle on the roof, as parking inside a garage did limit his ability to call it to him should the need arise. The autonomous driver function was handy, but only made the Omni vehicle drive in the most direct route to the postman, which was bad when the vehicle was parked in a building because the vehicle would total itself before it made it to the agent. Ow! It's a chair, boondoggle. Thank you for the lurk, Boone. Appreciate it, buddy. A couple of friends were in Spain. They had another friend join them. All three of them hit it on. Man, third friend got it. Third friend got it. Going with her. Apparently, it went so well. She was. Alrighty then. She got. I'm not gonna say what I had. What came to mind. But it was along the lines of something dirty, which was bad for the agent when the vehicle, sadly, bad for the agent when the vehicle was in a building, which sadly was bad for the agent. The vehicle was in a building. The vehicle would total itself before it needed to. Which sadly was bad for the agent when the vehicle was in a building. I feel like I can rewrite this. Sadly, the autonomous driver function was handy, but only made the Omni vehicle drive the most direct route to the postman, which meant When I was in high school, some girls came back from the bathroom looking at a rumor. We had a rumor that transpired in our school that a girl had lost a Sharpie marker because she was too busy using it on herself in a bathroom. She had to go home because it got lost in the back door. That's about the worst one I got. I don't even remember what the girl's name was who did it. I'm obviously not going to speculate what that girl's name was now, even though like there was 2 of every name that you could think of in our grade for girls. It's crazy. It always cracked me up how many like Alexes and Chris's we had that were girls in our grade, or like guys that were named same name. Antoine. No, we did not have an Antoinette in our grade. Sparta High School was a very, very small graduating class size for my year. It was uncharacteristically small. The autonomous driver function was handy, but only made the Omni vehicle drive the most direct route to the postman, which meant for the vehicle, it would total itself trying to get to the postman by bashing itself into whatever walls were totaling the vehicle. Could have heard many agents that had totaled a ride because of that feature. The tech wizards were in works to improve the feature, but the cartographer guilds and city map makers of New Albany were not ready to give the postman a map of every street, airway, and bypass without some assurances. Assurances that probably meant some extra liberties that would not go without some level of scrutiny from the governing powers. A trade-off that no one wanted to touch. I'll one-up you. Someone thought the coaches were... Oh. I mean, there was also a rumor at our school that 2 kids, like, fucked in the gym mats. That was a fun one. It turned out to be true. That's why it was really, really terrible, though. But yeah, no, 2 kids were getting it on our gym mats, and we had to, like, bleach wash them. Because it turned out the one kid ended up having herpes, which was also really, really sad. Small town USA, everybody. Trade-off that no one wanted to touch. Got to read over his communicator for any new messages before getting up out of his ride. Nothing of note was read. Read or received. He would leave his rifle locked. He would leave his rifle here, locked inside. He shouldn't be needing it, as he was only doing reconnaissance for the scene. He was about a mile or 2 from the casino, about 3 from their main office. Why the purple hand didn't have their 2 buildings together was easily excused, as them probably not. What? How did? Why the purple hand didn't have their 2 buildings together was easily excused, as is probably wanting their work makes their shady business with their more noble. Another piece of gossip I sort of remember was that there was 2 people in my school that were dating, but the dude had beaten the girl. Wow, what a chud. You know, that's like... Chud is almost a comedic thing to call people nowadays. That's just a straight up bastard. There's very few things I tolerate in relationships, like, as far as, like, you know, cheating is intolerable for me. I don't like cheating. It's a very hard thing for me to get around, like, coming to terms with, because it's just a betrayal of just magnitude unspeakable. But beating someone, That one actually gets me pissed off. It's like it's not only a betrayal of trust for the person that they're in a relationship with you of, but also the fact that now they can't. You betrayed everything that you put together in that relationship because of how you reacted to them. That really does piss me off when people abuse each other in relationships. And that's not like me trying to white knight or be like a... And of course he's giving an excuse like, oh, he's too much like his father or whatever. Not piece of shit. Dakota wasn't against gambling, but he never took to betting. Dakota wasn't against gambling, but he never took to actually betting money on anything. If he ever did, it was on himself. It was a life he had lived before he became the postman he was today. The life where his money was hard fought for. Only lucky breaks when his opponents fell in the ring first. We did have a couple high school teachers that were really weird about girls in our classes. But we also had a lot of high school boys that were weird about girl teachers in our class too, so... Which that one was also just messed up. Dakota wasn't against gambling, but he never took to betting money. It's a really unfortunate stereotype too, but like the problem why it's such a prevalent thing is because I don't want to touch this delicately. The problem that you run into with like why it's so prevalent is one, your body, that age range of like your teenage years, your body's going through the most changes of like actually like introducing hormones to your system. It's pushing forth your changes, like you're starting to grow, in certain ways that you normally wouldn't grow. Body is starting to figure out how to create more life. And so what happens is that cascading effect of hormones and pheromones causes, other people around you to get, they're also able to pick up on those pheromones and hormones, and it causes them to also like get riled up, so to speak. The problem is, when you're a kid, you're not, and I say kid in the sense of like being a teenager, you're not fully understanding what those things are, because you don't want to ask your parents about it because it's weird to ask your mom and dad about that stuff. So you go to a teacher, someone you can trust, and a lot of times what happens is some of those teachers are already kind of like leaning on the skeezy side of things. Not all, some do. But that's why it's like so important that you actually have counselors at your school that kids can actually go talk to about that stuff when their bodies are going through these changes. And so then you have teachers that kind of like prey on that for these kids, because kids don't know any better and they trust the teachers. Why would their teacher lie to them? It's really fucked up. It's also really fucked up too how like it's more like technically it does happen to both sides, but it's almost encouraged for young men to get with their teachers versus discouraged as equally as it should be for like teachers going after young girls. Like that always did bother me, and I think that's kind of a fair thing to say about everything in this regard, is when you have a system that's set up to take care of people in like a school setting, and then that school setting is purposely engaging these kids in ways that they shouldn't be engaging with things because they're just too young to understand. was really, really frustrating. Anyways, Dakota wasn't against gambling, but he could never get around the idea of betting money on anything. If he ever did, I feel like we can go like this. He could never get around the idea of betting on money on anything besides himself. Because the life he lived before Postman he would stay was a life where his money was hard fought for. Only lucky breaks. The only lucky breaks he got were if his opponent fell in the ring first. It taught him the value of every credit. Granted, now he still fights for his money, but it's not just for him, and he does it for everyone in the city, and especially for his sister. Dakota lives in a much better state as he did back then. That is for sure. All his family needs are met, and then some, considering the school she was going to. I feel like we don't need to consider the school. All his family's needs are met, and then some. I don't want to do that. So. All this aside, though, he knew that not everyone would know his history like he did. Not everyone lived a life like him. He would have to keep that in mind when going into the Violet Rose. All they would see is the visible him. All they would see is what he was before. The Postman, a bounty hunter with wish he could just call ahead and let them know that he wasn't there for anyone. No matter now. Finally out of his ride and atop the parking garage, Dakota took in the evening air. I feel like I need to say a thing here. Surely True Leaf wouldn't have had someone follow him around. He wants to go with the purple hand, right? It'd make more sense for him to contact the casino with the game. Nothing like that. I'm gonna see if I can still go to Burlington. Oh, that would be fun. Are you talking like the clothing store or like actual Burlington? Not that there is like an actual Burlington. The department store? I haven't been to a Burlington co-factory in so long. Surely, True Leaf. Read over his screen paper. Any new messages? Nothing of note. Right over. See. We leave his rifle near locked inside. He shouldn't be needing it, as he is only doing reconnaissance for this evening. Postman walked out of the parking level he was on, making his way to the rooftop as he looked for anyone spying. Surely, True Leaf wouldn't have had someone follow him around and scout out the purple hand. It seemed out of his style with the style. It made more sense for him to contact the gang at the casino instead. His arrival. Dakota was about a mile or two from the casino, about 3 miles from the Purple Hand's main entrance. Okay, I think I like that better. Sure. Dakota read over his communicator for any new messages before getting up out of his ride. Nothing of note was read or received. He would leave his rifle here. Locked inside, as he shouldn't be needed. Let's change this to... Postman was only doing reconnaissance for this evening. Dakota read over his communicator for any new messages before getting up out of his ride. Nothing of note was read or received. He would leave his rifle here in the Omni vehicle locked inside, as he shouldn't be needing it. The postman was only doing reconnaissance for this evening. He walked out of the parking level he was on, making his way to the rooftop as he kept an eye out for anyone spying on him. Surely, if one wouldn't have had someone follow him around as he went to scout out the Purple Hand. It seemed out of the High Elf's style. It made more sense for him to contact the gang and the casino instead and have them be ready for Dakota's arrival. Dakota was about a mile or two from the casino and about 3 miles from the Purple Hand's main office. It would have been easy for them to see him approaching by car. That is why he parked here, after all. Why the Purple Hand didn't have the two buildings together was easily excused as probably them not wanting to mix their shadier businesses with their more noble work. Dakota wasn't against gambling. So Dakota's watching this entire series. Dakota is a part of the series. The idea is that Dakota is the character from the series, and when it's all said and done, I'm not sure how I want it to be implemented where I become the character Dakota, but my idea is that a fail? Why did I fail? Rick, what are you doing? I don't know how this works. How any of that works. Fail is for when I actually fail, not just for you to put a fail down. Although you did make me drop my fidget toy that I had. A little annoying. I don't make the rules. Well, obviously, it's my job to make the rules. Ugh. There we go. Picked it up. I mean, Dakota wasn't against gambling, but he never could get around the idea of betting money on anything beside himself. As the life... Oh, I just realized I never answered your question, chum. Dakota is a part of the series of books as a character from the books. I haven't yet decided how I want the whole streaming part of Dakota to become a thing. Outside of the fact that maybe he's just like... This is all what he did before he was a streamer. Might be how we go about it. And it would like lean into the credence of like, yeah, why he's writing the books and everything is because this is like his history, you know, his different missions and stuff like that. And then it would explain like the bias of his character and other things like that too. But I think that's how I'm going to do it, chum, is I'm going to have it where if I do end up getting the money saved up to make a VTuber model for Dakota specifically, or like I would rather do like a PNG. I think doing like a 2D animation for it would be funner given the context of it being a cartoon. I think it'd be fun to have it where instead of how we have it now where I'm just writing out the story for my Twitch character, it would be him writing the story of his time as a postman. And that's what the cartoon show is in his lens, when in reality it's just a different cartoon show that you find. Some esoteric BS or whatever. But yeah, that's how I think we're going to go about it. We'll see, though, because I don't plan on getting the money together anytime soon to make a VTuber model or a PNG model of Dakota to be, so. The only lucky breaks he got were if his opponent fell in the ring first. It taught him the value of every credit earned. Granted, now he still fights for his money, but it's not just for him. He does it for everyone in the city, especially for his sister. Dakota lives in a much better state as compared to back then. Compared to what he did. I feel like I should hyphen this. Only lucky breaks he got were if his opponent fell in the ring first. Dakota lives in a much better state compared to what he did back then, for sure. All his family needs are met and then some, especially considering the school Emily was going to. All this aside, though, he knew that not everyone would know his history like he did. Not everyone lived a life like him, and he would have to keep that in mind when going into the Violet Rose. All they would see is what he was before them. The visible him, postman, the bounty hunter that was potentially after one of them. For what? He gotta bring himself to fathom. He wished he could just call ahead and let them know that he wasn't there for anyone. I don't know. In a sense, yeah. But like, it's actually a really good way to put it. Yeah, it is kind of like pulling a Tron. The difference though is like, the book is being written in the sense of like Dakota, like, you as the reader find the series on DVD, which is established in the prologue, and then in the outlog or the whatever the ending thing, epilogue, in the epilogue, right? In the epilogue, you get contacted by, no, sorry, you don't get contacted. You go to contact the guy that created the series. So in book 1, it goes through the first season of the show, which is then revealed that, if and when we make Dakota the actual like streaming thing that I do here, where I stream as Dakota Howell, the difference would be is that the book is written through the perspective of Dakota. So like it might be like 2 different releases, if that makes sense, where you got the viewer and then the Dakota version of the book, where the Dakota version is the prologue and epilogue is different, right? Which actually we might write out, but regardless, for now let's focus on what we're doing right here. But the idea is that it's like the book is the novelization of the cartoon series that you find. So like book 1 is season 1 of the show, which is the first one you find. In the epilogue, where you go to reach out to the creator of the show, that's when you start to learn more about the Arcane Chronicles, because in the epilogue or the prologue of the next book, the creator contacts you and sends you season 2, and then goes, hey, when you're done watching this all, send it back to me. And then book 2 is season 2 of the show novelized, and then the epilogue is you sending it back, but now there are people, now the people that own the bookshop or the movie rental place that you broke into, they're wanting to sue you for going into their property to take their stuff. So now it's a thing of proving that the guy owns it. So like book 2 is the prologue and epilogue of book 2 is you receiving season 2 from the guy. The prologue is you receiving the stuff from it. The epilogue is you then getting another letter in the mail saying that, hey, the people that own that movie rental place are wanting to sue you for stealing that. And then I don't know where we're going to go from there, because I'm going to have the lawsuit get dropped, but I don't know how to like explain how the lawsuit will get dropped, besides just leaving as a cliffhanger for the next prologue. So then prologue 3 will somehow either skirt around the court where you're not getting sued, But the guy actually goes to talk to the people that run the movie rental place and be like, yeah, no, that was my work that I had here because I had, we had to deal with the family that ran this store. And then it's revealed that the family that ran the store didn't want to put out the work because they're going to try to steal it from the guy because they were sitting on a gold mine. And that's where the mystery kind of unfolds from there. And then by book 4, which is the last book I have planned, that is when it's like you're fully engrossed in the series, you want to know more about it, and the guy is unable to send you anything, and that's probably where we'll take a break from writing the books. And if we are still doing the streaming thing by then, the idea is that's when Dakota starts streaming, and he's like, yeah, the books are, because him as a character, it's going to be explained in universe that this is him writing this all, when in reality it's just the show novelized, right? Kind of like how Bilbo and Frodo wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. The idea is that it's Dakota that's written all this, and then like if we ever do other stuff with other characters, yeah, pretty much. But no, the idea is that it's like Marty and Scott, which were the two people that were, they were the sons of the people that owned the store originally, and you didn't know this because those are the only two names dropped off. And so they find out in the meantime, while you have already contacted the creator of the show, that their parents had purposely never put the movies out for people to rent, or the show for people to rent, because they were hopeful that they could just swoop in, steal the property, and then sell it. Because they're like, oh, we found this obscure 80s show that never took off. That was their idea. But Marty and Scott didn't know that until, they talked to, they end up finding out because, well, they're going through everything in that building because they're, trying to figure out what to do with it. So they find the plans because stupid villains will always write down their plans. They're kind of dumb about that. And so once the two sons find that out, they're like, oh, shoot, one of the copies got out. We need to get the copy back. They should have just went rich with the Son of the Mask. Yeah, I mean, they could have, but no, the idea is that it's like you find yourself, all because you wanted to experience a bit of your nostalgia, you ended up saving this guy's work. That's the idea. Is the guy who had this all written out in a contract and all this other stuff set up was like, yeah, no, this was the original business idea. This was all the paperwork we had for it. They didn't keep up their end of the deal. Look, Jimmy Kennedy. Remember him? Golly. I do remember him. But yeah, no. So that's kind of what the idea is. And then I'm not sure where to go after the 4th book, because the 4th book, Epilogue, is what I have ideaed out so far, is where it's like, okay, the creator of the show wins the rights because it's his work. There was only ever distribution rights given to the movie rental place. He sells Neon Evangelion shirts. That's pretty cool. But yeah, no. So, idea is by the time at the end of the 4th book, the creator of this series wins his legal custody battle over it because it's his work, and then you're given the ability to like distribute it online, because instead of like him just trying to find a TV show to syndicate it on, he just uploads it as like a streaming thing on like social media, where he has like just a 24-hour live stream that's just the show playing along with like a YouTube channel for every episode or whatever have you. That's the idea of how Epilogue 4 ends. And then 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever we go from there book-wise. I don't even know how many books I want this thing to have. I mean, there are people that do that. But no, it's just like, it's convoluted for convoluted sakes, obviously. But the idea of it is like, you happen to stumble upon this while going through a nostalgia trip, and the result of your nostalgia trip ends up being that the show gets published on social media because the guy who owned the series never thought to actually post it to social media because he's old. He's a boomer. And he's dealing with two people that believe that it is their family's work because of the contract that he had, that the writer had with the people that own the movie rental store that was supposed to put his work out for people to rent, and they never did. That's the idea. Vampire Knight, that's an anime, isn't it? I feel like it is. No matter now. I might have... I'm trying to remember if I've watched that. I watched a lot of obscure anime with my one friend. Water! Wait, why did you message me over Steam lines? That's cheating. All right. Finally out of his ride and atop the parking garage, Dakota took in the evening air deeply as he looked over the horizon, seeing the various spires and skyscrapers piercing the distance as he breathed in and out, and then out slowly. Well, can't just watch this forever, he told himself before shaking his limbs up and then stretching out before putting his watch on the self-levitation spell. He hovered slightly off the concrete pad and looked at the watch's out. Shocked, he tapped the watch face twice before realizing his watch was barely taking out any mana to channel the spell. No kidding, he said as he looked over the drain rate and saw his watch was easily more than tenfold efficient. He'd have to test the limits of the upgrades later. Taking his first step off into the open air was always the most intense, regardless of how many times he had done this in the past. The wind rushing by his ears was as deafening as the heart pounding in his chest while he fell through the sky. Gravity was pulling him in uniform measure before the spell took full effect. As his body grew closer to terminal velocity, the self-levitation spell powered up slowly. The cessation of weightlessness lingered for a moment as gravity resettled in his gut. Gravity resettled in his gut. The air seemed to listen to his call as it helped slow his descent briefly before he was able to move himself around completely. He was thankful for his combat visor for keeping the wind out from drying out his eyes, allowing him to keep a better gauge of how far he fell. Dakota then pivoted and swooped back skyward. He floated at the apex of his arch for a moment, enjoying the sensation of being above the clouds before coming to a pause to get his bearings. Very funny like that. Dakota was above the aerial traffic level, looking out and around as he hovered there, figuring out which direction he needed to go. Should be able to figure it out simply enough. Might have to dip lower levels first, though. He would need to dive down below the aerial level. Not to himself. Post man. You need to dive down below the aerial traffic to remain as inconspicuous as a Postmen would need to dive down below the aerial traffic level to remain as inconspicuous as No, Limes, we're not doing that. As conspicuous as he could be while being a person just flying. As just being a wolfkin-looking person flying here. As being a wolfkin, as being wolfkin person flying here. Flying here would draw more unwanted attention, so he moved on, flying steadily through the afternoon air before swooping down below the aerial traffic. The postman was absent-mindedly listening in on one of the comm lines. with him just being a wolfkin-looking person flying here. I feel like that flows better. The postman was absentmindedly listening in on one of the comm lines to make sure he wouldn't miss out on any fellow agents nearby that needed a hand in the field as he flew on. So far, it was a relatively peaceful day. Nothing major being called out, no monsters, no criminals, no villains, and nothing about vampires. You couldn't tell if he was annoyed by there being nothing about vampires or if he was just getting bored of the uneventful nature of this flight. Trying to keep his mind from wandering back to a year ago, he wondered idly if you need to stop for a moment as the watch cool off. He checked his upgraded watch. It showed no signs of faltering. So, put it flew on. Great, I'm more hungry now. Well, and that's kind of your fault for looking at it, though, you know? Might just be a little bit. Dakota hadn't been flying for long when he recalled his message from the judge's representative. Inside will be the first of 5 upgrades. He did the math in his head and realized he had only gotten 4 upgrades. What was the last upgrade he was meant to get? The thought rattled around in his head. The possibilities were near limitless to him as to what it could be. The judges could seemingly do whatever they needed or wanted. So with him still being hand-selected, that did give him hopes as to what his last upgrade was to. Thought lingered briefly as he then heard that line in his head once more. Received with question, answer. It felt like he had answers to the questions regarding his other 4 upgrades he got earlier. The power up to his watch and the sword, Starfall, very self-explanatory, as they would allow him to better deal with the Bloodsmith in a fight. One of the things in the first brawl that led to him losing wasn't that he wasn't equipped to deal with the vampire. One of the things in the first brawl that led to him losing was that he was not equipped enough to deal with a vampire, let alone a vampire lord. The pistols and rifles made sense as well, but he already had to ask for those upgrades before the judges gave him the upgrade to his watch and sword, Starfall. Upgrade to his watch and Starfall. Were they not a part of the 5 upgrades he was to get? He was thankful for the time to go over this in his mind without being distracted by anything, but the frustration overthinking began to ooze into his brain. The arsenal upgrades fit within the 5 upgrades, but there was still a thought to be had about what else he'd be receiving. As now dealing with the knowledge that the Bloodsmith may very well be a vampire lord, possibly even the vampire lord from 500 years ago. Possibly even the reincarnation of the vampire lord from 500 years ago. He thought back to what he knew about that attack. Who was the one to stop it? Little was known about the hero that fell that vampire lord. All that anyone would ever talk about was how much of a great magic user he was, and how he was later brought in by the judges and never seen again. Could have wondered if the hero then was either brought up into the judges' ranks or hidden away for such a time when a vampire lord returned. Made sense, as the sword he had was the same blade that defeated the very same victim. Could have wished they had talked about past battles more when onboarding neophytes, as that knowledge of what they could be going up against would prove to be beneficial to them. However, wait, why are we blaming? Oh, you're saying you weren't blaming anyone else. I mean, you did try to blame me earlier, though, about us talking about food, but you wanted to know about dishes to cook. So, I was giving you a pretty easy dish to cook. However, he did recognize that it would be redundant to the X-adventures that would join the Postman. Their experiences would make them more aware of these threats, though. Made more sense not need to give them stories of victories when they all had legends of their own. But it didn't help the newcomers. You could have realistically just wished that things were different for the newer agents of the Postman Guild, especially with the sister wanting to join him as a postman and with everything that had happened last year. He'd need to admit that this was weighing heavier on him than he realized. Dakota just didn't want to see the people he helped build up into heroes fall victim to him. Before much longer, Dakota would start to slow down as he entered the airspace near the Violet Roads. The casino itself was a large building that was one of the few in this middle district to have a more subtle appearance. There were a few opulent structures in the middle district, but not here in the aqueducts. Opting for a more discreet look, the Violet Roads still dwarfed a lot of the buildings around it. The building was surrounded by warehouses, small business shops, and the major port off the river that jutted through the middle of New Albany. Great location to not attract the wrong kind of eyes. Dakota looked for a good spot to land without needing to go to street level, as he still wanted to be mostly inconspicuous as he made his way to the casino. He landed north of that building, on the ramparts of a shop of the local alchemy guild. Dakota realized he had been here before on a mission 10 years ago. Or on a mission, late 10 years ago. Dakota didn't like to talk about the mission. Listen, I'm a very hungry man. Oh, yeah, that would do it. That reminds me. I need to make sure I take my painkillers before bed tonight. I can go to work tomorrow. Dakota didn't like to talk about that mission, due to him accidentally destroying a warehouse full of various magical instigator that just came on off a cargo ship. The postman was chasing a rogue hero into the factory warehouses that was owned by one of the crafting guilds. Didn't we say it was Gregor he was chasing? To a factory warehouse that was owned by one of the crafting guilds. They were going to be creating magical powered exosuits for the dock workers in the aqueduct districts of New Albany. Postman recalled it well. He was nearly in the exact same spot where he saw that rogue hero dart in between two shipping trucks as the trucks ran their circuit around the docks. Dakota leapt into action without much care or fault, only being focused on taking the target down. Other times. Now, he was taking the time to plan out how he would approach the casino. Would he just fly over and drop onto the roof? Was he going to simply sneak in the front door? Would he just casually stroll in the back? He spent more time thinking about this than he thought he would have. But that time spent sitting there did give him the chance to catch something out of the corner of his eye. He was not the only one on these rooftops. Out of the corner of his eye, Dakota saw a darkly clad figure stepping back behind cover as he realized he was spotted. Dakota stood up straighter. Hair standing up at the back of his neck as he felt his heartbeat quicken, his body hesitating to move, like a wolf unsure of what the other smell was. Like a wolf unsure of what other smell it picked up on its own. Oh! No! I don't have anything to give you. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Headbutt down. Headbutt down. No. I don't have gold. Bloodsmith. Alright. Dakota stood up straighter, the hair on his back of his neck, the hair standing on the back of his neck as he felt his heartbeat quicken. His body was hesitating to move. Like a wolf unsure of what the other smell it had picked up on its own. He then recognized that smell all at once. He grimaced and turned towards that other building. The very same person he had hoped to find was here, of all places. The Bloodsmith was here. Episode 3. You know, he's been grinding. I do see that number. That is insane. You're almost at 4 million credits. Good grief. It's too low. The fuck you mean too low? I need more gold. Should I rename credits to gold? Would that make you happy? I like credits though. Credits are easy. Episode 3, in Daylight Unshackled. Thursday, April 28th, 2699, dawn of first new time. Locale, North Aqueducts of New Albany. Always put your best boots on when it's opening day. Saying with a forgotten meaning from the dock workers. The bloodsmith felt his heart pause briefly. Odd. He shouldn't have been startled by seeing someone else show up here. No one should have known his plan, let alone any postman, especially him. None were able to stop him, Dakota included. Even if that mangy dog had gotten some new gear, the bloodsmith had still mopped the floor with Dakota the last time they crossed paths. Surely he would and could beat him again. The only reason that Mutt lived was because Erie was there to save him. The vampire steadied his breathing as he recalled that fight. No, beatdown from Erie. Placed a hand over the scar from where the weapon had pierced his flesh. The wound still felt like it never healed properly, as if it was constantly tearing. Did she have some sort of holy magic in her shaping weapon? No matter. She was not here. Dakota was. Yet, he still hesitated. Something gnawed on the back of his mind as he dared peek out from cover again. He assumed Dakota hadn't seen him yet, or if he did, the dog would have come running. Reagan clenched his fist and flexed out his hand repeatedly. Something was holding him back. Was it self-preservation? It should not be. His plan was foolproof. I'll think about changing the credits over to gold lines. I won't. You wish to give me more, yes? The plan was simple enough. Crash into the main warehouse of the Red Veins and force a most hostile of takeovers and assume control of the gang. He needed the manpower if he wanted to take on the postman in any capacity. While they would supply the manpower, the Red Vein gang would also ensure he had a flow of income and commerce to fund his projects and goals. Raising an army was easy for him. Funding it, though, needed something already established. What better way to get an army? Steal it. The bloodsmith sat behind his cover for a moment, patiently waiting for that mutt to move. Did Dakota actually know he was here, or was it sheer dumb luck? Regardless, the bloodsmith stayed in cover, only briefly peeking out to ensure that Dakota wasn't looking for him. He was getting nervous. Being nervous led to making mistakes. The vampire took a gamble and looked out once more. That's when he realized he made his first mistake. As he peeked out from cover, Dakota was looking right at him. The slightest of pauses was all Dakota gave as he weighed his options here. Clearly, he was not hallucinating. Dakota smelled something fall in the air shortly after he got here and assumed it was just a river of some garbage nearby, as the docks did produce a lot of refuse from all the... Lime, if we're going to be doing a new currency system, credits, you're already going to have a lot of gold. Okay? You're going to have like 3.8 million gold. Alright? I know it doesn't seem like a ton, but that's at least like a full set of Rune Guthix trimmed armor in RuneScape, right? Could have smelled something fall in the air shortly after he got here and had assumed it was just the river or some garbage nearby, as the docks did produce a lot of refuse from all the shipments in and out of New Albany. The woven postman drew himself to full stature and readied his spells on his watch. A soft voice chirped as each spell hummed to life. Directional shielding, aggressive speed, superior strength, self-levitation. Gas! But I want more! Well, there's ways to get more. Play the games. He was not about to let Reagan escape him this time. Dakota started to slowly hover in the air as he shimmered. Everything on his body felt imbued with a power he hadn't known. The air around him seemed to pop away as the shielding worked over his body. The combat visor in his face synced with his watch as it showed each spell and their drain of power. Dakota would have to keep an eye on this. The watch was definitely improved, but still, channeling 4 spells at once did put a noticeable drain on the watch. No matter. Gotta get to him, Dakota thought to himself. The postman sprang into action and bolted off towards the rooftop he saw Reagan on. Speed. Sorry your back hurts, chum. It's up to 10,000. Besides, I don't think you have that much yet, do you? His fuse, when he saw the vampire. Alright, the postman sprang into action and bolted off towards the rooftop. Bear with me, I'm learning the commands. I'm becoming old. Chum, I mean this in the nicest way possible, but don't take it the wrong way. But I know I'm old because Friday morning before work, I bent down to put my shorts on and I threw out my back. So, unless you're, like, that old, if you get, alright, Lime, if you roll a nat 20 on this next dice roll, I will give you 1,000,000 credits. Dakota sprang into action, bolted off towards the rooftop. He saw Reagan on. Vampire made aware of him as the bloodsmith sprang out from his cover and ran away. Ooh, not a 20. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Maybe next time. The hunt was on. Double or nothing? So what, you're gonna blow all your credits on the chance to only make 1,000,000 more back? Lime, that's kind of risky. I wouldn't do that if I were you. No, no, no. No. The hunt was on. I just get double or I get nothing. Uh-huh. So no risk? Sounds fair. Dakota landed on the roof and deactivated the self-levitation spell, figuring he wouldn't need it as he was not that far behind Rick. The two sprinted off. Dakota cursed as he saw that the vampire had picked up some more skill in harnessing his powers. As he seen the target vanish and shimmer back into view with that dark crimson haze surrounding him. The vampire was fast, nearly as fast as Dakota. As the two leapt over HVAC units, vents, fans, exhaust ports, and other structure features during their run. The bloodsmith was definitely nimbler than Dakota, deftly leaping and diving over and around obstacles. As Dakota would have to clamber and shimmy through some of the tighter spaces, the vampire let him through. Dakota would have liked to have drawn out his pistols and unloaded into the vampire to slow him down. Given the imperfect lines of sight and risk for unintended targets hit, the Wolfen postman stayed his hands and focused on catching up to Bloodsmith. Alright, fine. Tell you what, you can roll another dice and you hit a d20 and get 20 on it, I will give you 2. If this next roll is indeed 20. Ooh, only a 2, Frank. Tisk, tisk. Another 7. Huh. I mean, technically, you did get double. Yeah. That wasn't... The problem with Dakota's aggressive speed spell is that it wasn't instantaneous. It had to build up. The constant changing in his momentum from climbing, sliding, and leaping left him unable to build up to a faster speed to catch the bloodsmith. He wondered idly if the vampire knew of how his spell worked as they ran for a few more yards over and through the different patches of rooftops. Third chance, but I have to get... Watch you get a 20 now. The bloodsmith's mind was racing with different options of how to get away, but none of those options were becoming available to him. Dakota had gotten much stronger and faster since their last encounter, and the mutt also had gotten something that gave him the highest form of dread, that sword on his back. Why? Why was a sword scaring him? A sword, a melee weapon of all things, was causing him this much distress. Ugh. Oh well. No extra 2 mil today. The vampire would not dwell on that blade, as he had to find a spot where he could either trick Dakota into running off the roof or capture a civilian to use as a makeshift victim to ensure that Dakota would have to save them so he could get away. Heroes have their choices already made when innocents are on the line, he thought to himself as they continued their chase. Reagan did not want to learn the full extent of what Dakota got for upgrades first-handedly. He had hoped to catch Dakota on patrol so he could see the upgrades for himself before that mutt would have found him. The bloodsmith, rock, paper, scissors, Rochambeau. That would actually be a fun thing to code in for Firebot, is being able to play rock, paper, scissors against it. I think I'd have to do it as an audio command, though, and then just have it randomly pull out of, like, different audio lines. I could probably do that. Bloodsmith continued to try to get more distance. Put vampire here. Oh, I already did that. All on post. He tried to get more distance between himself and that werewolf. I must trip him up or something. Then he saw it. The top of a building that was nearly a straight runaway that opened up to the empty air above the street. Perfect. Vampire could bait Dakota blindly into chasing him down onto that roof, where he could have that postman impale himself onto his claws. He could then have that postman impale himself onto his claws. Let's just saw in his mind perfectly. Stopping mid-sprit, turning around, just in time to feel his claws puncture through Dakota's chest before heaving and throwing him off the roof to his death below. It was beautiful. Vampire nearly chuckled as Dakota bumbled on behind him. It's full sprint. There you go. You write something, I write something else. Rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, but like, when do we? How do I? Like, there's no way for us to trust that it'll work that way. I might try to make a rock, paper, scissors code, but I would have to figure out how to program it with variable. So that might take me a bit to figure out. Let's count it down. Yeah, but there's still a delay. You know, there's still a delay in the stream. Yeah, but there's still a delay, Lime. I say go, it's about 15 seconds later for you, so you'll see what I put in. Isn't there like a rock paper scissors game on like Discord or something? I mean, you know what you haven't done yet? You haven't said please. While the Bloodsmith circled back around, Dakota would follow, reacting swifter to each directional change the fallen postman made as he drew closer to closing the gap. Please, my vocab? Nah. Fine. Be that way. Drew made. Okay. While the Bloodsmith circled back around, Dakota would follow, reacting swifter to each directional change the fallen postman made as he drew closer to closing the gap. His heart was pounding hard in his chest. This year of torment was finally coming to a close. He'd finally be able to avenge those lost on that terrible night and restore the faith in the Postman Guild that the people of New Albany lost. However, Dakota didn't let presumed victory cloud his judgment. Wait, for real? Oh my word. Okay. No! No! Damn it! Yeah, but we didn't agree to any money on that one. You know what? I'll be nice. When did you say 100K? When? I find that hard to believe. Oh, okay, you said that before the heist. Okay, whatever. Fine. Whatever. There, everybody gets credits. Now, where was I? While the Bloodsmiths circled back around, Dakota would follow, reacting. There. Don't say I don't ever do anything for you. He was reacting swifter to each directional change the fallen postman made as the werewolf drew closer to closing the gap. His heart was pounding hard in his chest. This year of torment was finally coming to a close. He'd finally be able to avenge those lost from that terrible night, restore the faith in the Postman Guild that the people knew Albany lost. However, Dakota didn't let pursuing victory cloud his judgment. He hadn't caught the Bloodsmith yet, so he did his best to keep his focus on his target. Capture and kill him first, then celebrate. 4 million! Oh, look at Frank, you the MVP right here. It was then that Dakota realized what Reagan may. There's a rooftop below them that opened out above the open street. Not good. That would bring him closer to civilians, which would increase the chances of others getting hurt. He knew he needed to get a call out, but if he stopped sprinting here to do so, the vampire would seize the moment and escape. Dakota pleaded in his mind that a postman was in the area so they would see his distress signal. Dakota prayed silently. He pressed his chin into the visor to activate the distress signal. The only thing about it is now every other postman knew he was in trouble, possibly even the moles in the Postman Guild. Without much more of a chance, Dakota continued on, barreling through the different rooftop equipment as he left out towards the Bloodsmith. As he did so, the vampire dropped down to that lower rooftop. Dakota watched as he saw that fiend begin to spit about, shoulders dropping, hands glowing. The Bloodsmith sought to catch him lacking and have him impaled on his claws. Did he now? Dakota smirked behind his visor. As he landed, the Bloodsmith turned about on his heel, spun around to face Dakota, his hands glowing red with energy as his claws dripped with the same dark power. That is it. That's it. Now your doom is here, the vampire thought he had Dakota. He raised his hands to stab into the charging werewolf, but soon found the ground out from underneath his feet. That'd be terrible if that was the conversion rate. He raised his hands to stab into that charging werewolf, but soon found the ground out from underneath his feet. The Bloodsmith blurted out as he felt weightlessness briefly. He then saw Dakota's glowing combat visor fill his vision. Those hands of Dakota's latched onto either side of his head and hefted him up, shouting in pure rage as he stepped down hard, flipping himself over Reagan. The noise Reagan made was unintelligible as he went heels over head, flailing desperately to grab onto Dakota. He saw the rooftop below him for a moment before he felt those hands let him go. The vampire tried to grab onto that mutt's arms, but soon found himself overlooking the street below, very far below. The vampire had very little time to react. He tried to summon his crimson shroud to keep himself from falling to the street below, as that surely would shatter his shielding tattoo instantly. As he went to summon it, he felt something hard impact on his chest. It was those Mutt's armored boots. Dakota had leapt up into the air above him and then dropped a brutal aerial stomp down onto his chest, not only knocking the wind out of him, but possibly even hindering his shielding already. He clawed desperately at the air, trying to find a purchase, tried to draw back air into his lungs, or try to grab a hold of that mangy dog. But all it did was nothing as he was sent rocketing towards the asphalt below. Dakota floated in the air briefly, thankful for his self-levitation spell to kick back in as he found himself watching Reagan as he was sent soaring towards the street, 50 stories below. Dakota stayed airborne for a few moments, checking his distress call to see if anyone had replied. Nothing. He crawled and watched to see if that crimson shroud would appear on the vampire. No telltale glow. Then there was a loud crack that echoed from the impact. About 3 seconds after the sound died, he heard civilians clamoring. Dakota was almost annoyed. No matter. He hovered there for a moment longer before reaching for his sword. It's time to unleash Starfell. The day had begun simply enough for Tara Livingstone. She went to work like every other day, like she had for the last 7 months. Nothing different for the Dark Elf since her transfer to this hospital. The only thing that darkened her steps home was that it was 1 year since everything in her life changed for the worst. She did her best to keep her chin held high, and focus from that darkness and onto the patients she cared. It was a 1 year anniversary of the Night of 1,000 Stars. Despite that, nothing out of the ordinary had occurred at work or on her way there. If anything, it was a peaceful and easy day. Despite what had happened only a year ago, it seemed like most of the world had moved on. No one seemed to really have any issues with what day this was. They probably didn't lose anyone on that accursed night like she did. With the lack of her having anything With the lack of her having to go on retrievals, it meant she got to relax and enjoy a day of helping nurses and doctors in the hospital. That was something that was something that hadn't happened in a while. The Dark Elf worked in the medical guild as an immediate medical response member of the Northern District Hospital of New Albany, away from the Southern District Hospital where she worked a year ago. She was skilled in the ways of tending to people with wounds. Her mother often joked that she was a life giver. Tara's mind began to flood with dread as she could never forget that night. The night her father was laying out in her arms, bleeding out, dying from wounds he sustained from the vampire lord that attacked the city. I know how to play Tetris. Not the best at it, but I know how to play Tetris. Do 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 do. No, Tetris isn't a PvP game. It's a puzzle game. Anyways, I gotta read the depressing part. As Tara's mind began to flood with dread as she could never forget that night. The night her father was lying out in her arms, bleeding out, dying from wounds he sustained from the vampire lord that had attacked the city. His final words still seeping in her mind as she struggled to hold back the tears in her eyes. I know there's versus matches, but no. Never forget, my brightest star. You've always guided me home. As Tara would do her best to keep herself from dwelling on on the memory and hoped for a distraction. As the Dark Elf traveled, she thought of what she should get to place on her father's grave in memory and honor of it. The old man always did like sailboats, she thought to herself as she turned down the street to go to a toy store. To the one he'd take her to as a child and buy model boats that they'd release into the Our people used to sail across the oceans in boats like this, he said to her, telling her stories and legends of their people from the forgotten times. It was getting harder to hold back the tears as she checked out with the small wooden sailboat. The small wooden craft was nearly identical to the many they'd released on the rough waters from the wake of freighter boats coming in from the oceans. Love this. As Tara packed the boat into the bag, she heard the crowd outside cry out, where the sound of thunder crashed hard into the asphalt of the streets outside the store. The glass of the storefront wobbled and held despite the force of the impact from whatever just happened outside. People began shouting and clamoring as Tara pushed her way through the gathering crowd, carrying through the mixture of voices that someone fell from the rooftops. He fell awfully far. Are we sure he's alive? Call the cops! Is that a postman? His garbs are wrecked. Need to put another line here. Nicely done. I wouldn't have remembered that. Or was that a guess, Frank? I never actually watched Ruby. I thought so. You didn't strike me as someone to watch that. He fell awfully far and fast. What happened? Are we sure he's alive? Call the cops! Is that a postman? His garbs are wrecked. As Tara continued to work her way through the crowd, pushing and nudging people aside gently as she called out, I am RM. Please give me space. Let me through. People started to move aside as she finally made it to the impact site. Anyone else here? I am RM. They began to back up as other people with medical experience stepped forward to help her out. As a few people rushed to her aid, they began taking off their accessories and fished through their bags for medical supplies. Even though they may all be off the clock, it was standard protocol for immediate medical response members to keep some medical gear on them to assist until proper help could arrive. Was there any active threats or other postmen in the area? One of the gathered people asked. He was a burly-looking Borkin man. Did we get word out to the hospital guild? I didn't almost with the chair. Nicely done, chum. Way to go. Yes, began a small dwarven lady, her hands gloved. She began to get a mask on and stood up with a potion bottle in hand. We called the moment the dust settled. Whatever hit him good. They have a postman agent in the area. The third IMRM started before his face grew pale. They say we need to leap. As his words were cut off from a sudden gust of wind that came from above. Dakota was on his way rapidly down with Starfall brandished. Blamed aimed at Reagan as he called to civilians to run. Get away! It's not safe! His voice thundered loudly as he quickly descended to the ground, his hand and sword waving to motion the people back. Dakota cursed. There should be help in the area. Why was no one here? You're in danger. Please go, he ordered, motioning for people to get away. As he made his call out to the postman, subtlety was no longer an option as he barked into his comm unit for backup. Cataclysmic target sighted. Agent Dakota requesting all available units to my location. Stat! The werewolf cursed as he kept the blade in one hand. As he continued to motion for people to escape. We have police and medical on the way, as Tara called out to Dakota. Before suddenly, everything seemed to get harder to focus on. Something was sapping her strength, and everything was beginning to take on a dark red hue. She had been the closest to Reagan. Dakota's eyes widened in terror as he saw that crimson vapor seep around Azatera. Reagan started to get back up, bloodied, broken, and haggardly ruined. The fall did do quite a number to him as his voice choked, breathing rasp as he held out his mangled arm towards Azatera. You will suffice. As he did so, she began to float towards him, caught in that deadly crimson mist. Dakota watched with sword brandished as Reagan started to darkly chuckle. The sword shined brighter and brighter while the bloodsmith began to reconstitute himself with that dark elf's vitality. As his wounds mended, the vampire cackled darkly as he nourished himself on her life-giving blood. Azatera began to go paler as she struggled weakly to get free of the vampire's hold. Dakota stood there for a moment as he ran through the options of what he had available to deal with the bloodsmith. He had the sword, obviously, but he needed to get the other civilians away first. He kept the sword in hand as he looked over his shoulder at the small crowd that was still there, looking to him to see what they should do. Every second wasted was another second of the civilian in Reagan's clutches not being able to make it. He had needed to do something fast. What are you doing? Run! He shouted before making his first move to begin his assault at Reagan. The vampiric villain held up his other arm as a wall of crimson energy crackled out and blocked off Dakota from reaching him. The werewolf growled as he tried desperately to push through the terrible cloud. He had to save her. He needed to stop him from killing another civilian. I had a thought, the bloodsmith said as he stopped draining the blood out of Azatera for a moment, using that dark, terrible energy to keep Dakota locked in place. I always wondered what would make you more upset, and what I could do to achieve that. He spun Azatera to be standing back upright, holding her limply as that crimson haze in that crimson haze as it slowly enwrapped around her body. The dark mist began to seep into her. She screamed out in pain as that crimson energy began to flow into her. So I figured I'd try something new. You no doubt know that I have made Thrall by now, right? Well, I wonder if I can make something stronger. Could have saw the changes happening to her in horror as her hair and skin paled out. Her once dark ebony skin began to fade into ashen gray as a dark red streak began to flow out from her scalp, down her back. Her once purple eyes slowly burned into a maroon color as her body continued to morph. If I can make more vampires. Oh, but I felt a sudden surge in his soul as he broke through that cloud I was holding in place. The bloodsmith winced as his hold over Azatera began to weaken. Her body started to get back some of her color, but not all of it. Reagan hissed and raised his arm back up and pointed at her, resuming his corruption and consumption of the Dark Elf Azatera. Azatera shuddered as she screamed out once more. No! He bellowed as he pointed his blade back at the bloodsmith. Probably do this. Dakota bellowed before pointing his blade back at the bloodsmith and used a power word command on the vampire. Release! As that magic word hit Reagan, he slid back, falling to his knees as his hold over Azatera was released. The Dark Elf fell to the ground in the heat, her skin still turning ashen as the streak in her hair remained. The bloodsmith wiped the blood from Azatera that was pooling by the corner of his lip and lapped it off the back of his hand. He growled as he stood back upright. Now, Dakota, must choose, he said, pointing his clawed fingertip back at the postman. Breathing raggedly as he started to regain his composure, still shaken from the power word command, the vampire stood defiantly. Follow me and hunt me down. Chase me across this god's-forsaken city. Said, ah!
Start the game already!
Ow! Hello, Romulus. How you doing, buddy? Chase me across this god's-forsaken city, he said, crimson energy coalescing in his palm. Or do you risk your precious civilians to my newest ally? He leered at Dakota before sneering and raising up his hand. The choice is yours, mutt! The vampire darted back up towards the building he was cast down from, shambling briefly before he found his stride. The vampire worked his way back up the building by digging his crimson claws into the sides and scaling his way back up. The bloodsmith cackled out in a harsh laugh before leaping from that building to the next, going deeper into the city. I'm doing all right. My back isn't really bothering me now, so that's good. We've made progress in healing. I'm very, very much okay with that. See, the villains like your girlfriend. See, the villains are like your girlfriend or the city. What if the hero was aromatic? I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know how to answer that, chum. Dakota had no choice in the matter. He had to save Azatera before she became a full vampire. Who knew what damage she could cause if she was fully transformed? Dakota didn't know, nor did he want to find out. The postman couldn't just kill her. There had to be something he could do. He cursed. As Dakota scooped up the fallen dark elf into his arms, he looked around, trying to locate the nearest hospital guild as he felt her breathing slow. There wasn't much time. Where's the nearest hospital guild? Dakota called out to the other IMRMs that still were in the crowd nearby. They tried to come in closer to help him. But no one here would have the skills or medical gear to help keep the person from succumbing to vampirism. Really, Limes? Succumbing to vampirism. Down Maywood, about 7 blocks east, the Borkin man shouted back. We'll let the guild cops know what happened. Go, postman, she needs you. His voice booming over the crowd, murmuring. Meh. Dakota nodded, keeping Azatera up towards his chest as he softly exhaled out. We're going to get you to safety, ma'am. Can you tell me your name? The question was two-folded in purpose, to see if she was still with them, and to get what information out of her he could. My name's Dakota. I'm an agent of the postman. I'm going to get you safe, taken care of, okay? It took her a moment to reply. Her voice was weak and soft. I'm Azatera Livingstone. Pleased to meet you, Dakota. She said with masked pain, smiling weakly, her breathing labored. Likewise, stay with me. Okay? He then let his visor and his communicator begin their work to finding out all they could about her. He would save the files to go over later, as he would need to inform her family of where she was when she didn't get home in time. Wish it was under better circumstances, the Dark Elf said, where she looked down and brought her hand up to clasp weakly onto his arm. He was still warm. Then he began to hear the sirens warble from the incoming police guild vehicles. Hopefully, that meant a postman agent was with them, so they could resume the hunt of the bloodsmith. He could have grimaced as he channeled his watch's spell for aggressive speed, as he called out for the people to move out of his way. Normally, he'd stay to direct the police guild members, but he had to trust that they had an agent with them that would contact him. Dakota didn't have time to assume anything else. He needed to save Azatera at all costs. He couldn't fail someone again. He wouldn't. Dakota's mind raced as he darted off towards Maywood. The streets and sidewalks began getting too crowded. Getting too crowded for him to be running through. So he activated his self-levitation. So he activated his self-levitation spell to get up into the air so he could fly above the crowds of vehicles. Despite the direness in his travels, the postman could not go at full speeds. As doing so, he risked the health and safety of Azatera. Just another thing to contend with. Dakota felt as a terror grew colder with each passing second. Her hand remained as tightly as it was onto his arm as he raced on. Postman had already squelched off the alarm, ringing his ear, praised about her dwindling vitals as he flew. I'll give you your dog. No, she is a That's why I was like thinking earlier, chum. She's a main character. The idea of her existed. I just didn't know what I wanted her to be like. The postman already squelched off the alarm, ringing his earpiece as her dwindling vitals, ringing in his earpiece about her dwindling vitals as he flew on. The time was very much against him, as every passing second was bringing the chances of Azatera being lost to the vampires crushing through her body up higher. Dakota never really gave thought to wishing for miracles, but if he could, he would now. Bark, bark. There. Happy. Dakota felt as the terror grew colder with each passing second. Her hand remained as tightly as it was under his arm as he... Oh, I already read that paragraph. Thankfully, though, the trip to the hospital guild had come to its end, as the megastructure of the Northern District Hospital of New Albany loomed at the end of the street. Postman rushed towards the emergency branch of the building's lot and hurried Azatera's in. Normally, one would have to wait to be seen, but given the circumstances, Dakota just rushed her in, foregoing the check-in and just carried her into the facility. Her hand finally let go of his arm as he shouted for help. Dakota didn't know she had let go until he was kept from her side as they hauled her off into the operating room. Dakota watched on, his hand held up in the air, looking desperately towards her as they wheeled her out of his reach. She was in their care now. Dakota hoped he was not too late. Dakota clung to the empty cup of coffee in his hand as he stared off at the clock high above his head. The soft ticking it emitted was omnipresent as his thoughts rushing through his head. He knew how long he had been here waiting. He knew his report was already submitted and awaiting evaluation. He knew that Azatera was living on her own and worked here. He knew that she was a victim of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He knew that the Postman HQ did get his emergency call, but it was deleted before being pushed out to all active agents in the field. The mole worked in the Postman HQ's dispatch center. There was even a good chance that they had seen Dakota go and talk to the boss and warn Reagan that he would be out tonight. Dakota growled as he crumpled the paper cup in his hand. That would help them narrow down who was the one feeding information. Bloodsmith. Good. One less thing to worry about. Emily had since stopped by and left. She was only making sure her big brother was good, despite him telling her not to come here but to stay home. He couldn't risk her getting captured by the Bloodsmith if he was still in the air. Fortunately, the guild cops couldn't pick up on the trail of the vampire lord after he left Dakota. As Dakota went to save Azatera, the guild cops did take note of her possessions and brought them in. People would be mad for him prioritizing a citizen over the capture and annihilation of the terrorists that caused the Night of 1,000 Stars. Dakota would get so much fire and brimstone for this, and yet he made the right call. He had to. Dakota couldn't leave those civilians to suffer at the hands of the newly fledged vampire while he went to resume the chase of the Bloodsmith. Nor could he have just killed Azatera when she still had a chance to be saved. Dakota didn't want to have the same night occur all over again because of his inability to save people and make the right call. He couldn't handle another 1,000 lost souls. Couldn't handle another 1,000 lost souls had he made any other choice. Yeah, that's worded weirdly. He couldn't handle another 1,000 souls lost if he had made any other choice. He couldn't handle another 1,000 lost souls if he had made any other choice. The postman will get Reagan next time their paths crossed. He'd been putting that monster down for good. Justice will be served well before any trial would be had. Not with him as a postman or a hero, but as the executioner the city needed. His vengeful hand. It had been 5 hours since they started operating on Azatera. 3 hours since she had been in recovery. In that time, they did manage to save her, but at a cost. The doctors and healers on hand did all they could to heal her, but failed in the efforts to keep her from becoming a vampire. Dakota pushed the anger down as they explained she had not become a mindless dreg or thrall bent towards the bloodsmith as well. She was still herself, and had since gone through and repaired what bits of her were ravaged by the harsh blood drain that the vampire lord had done to her. Through their works of repairing her, it had been revealed she was more than just a dark elf. She was also a Gordadine. Dakota stood up and went over to look into Azatera's recovery room and saw her lying peacefully asleep. The vampiric mutations had taken a hold now, albeit not as horrifying as he had been told. She still looked very much alive, just pale for a dark elf. He glanced away and returned to his seat as he thought more of the Gordadine. He had heard of mentions of that race from history lessons and from briefs about how, as a race of people, they were acutely attuned to the ebb and flow of mana and magic and living things. Did the bloodsmith know this as he picked her up out of the crowd, or was it pure chance that he had selected her? Was she truly a victim of proximity or chance? The doctors nor the healers on hand had any way to know for sure, and neither would anyone else. Dakota wondered if this would pique the judge's interest, as the Gordadine people were responsible for the last act of the first cataclysmic war, when their army marched and allegedly began the magical decay of the old continent. Dakota found it peculiar that they received most blame in what ultimately ended the war. As in studying it, it was revealed that they were the ones wronged by the kingdom that ruled over the Central Mountain. The war started over a trade dispute and ended with half the world being destroyed. Regardless of her people's history, it was nearly 3,000 years ago when this all happened. And the fact that she was a surviving member of their race was an astonishment alone. How many survived after all these years? Dakota wouldn't worry too much about that, though, as he had a new guest arrive to take his focus off of that revelation. It was one of the judge's representatives, a slim-looking dragonkin with pearl-white scales and vivid green eyes. Her visage was something that Dakota couldn't help but stare at. She sized up Dakota with a soft smirk as she motioned a hand for the other two following her to halt on either side of her and the postman. The escort was two tech mage knights. It was a wonder they even fit through these halls as they stood motionless on either side of the representative himself, boxing him in with her as they about-faced and discouraged the curious. As private of a conversation anyone could have in a public hospital guild's building. I see you've taken to your new upgrades rather well. The watch seems to be the most unused so far. Her voice was warm to dripped of cold power. Good. You've enjoyed learning of your last gift. It was not the way we intended, nor for her to become this, but do enjoy your new partner all the same. New partner? Since when did Postman need partners directly? Dakota asked. We always had partners signed. Assigned to us on the fly by our boss. Not just assigned one while they're still in a hospital bed. Then he realized what she meant. Did you know she was going to be affected? Why her? What made her worth bringing into becoming a postman? Questions I cannot all answer, but I can say her becoming a vampire was not of our intent. The judges decided that the time of agents being assigned to each other on the whims of chance was no longer the best way to gather success. Her voice trailed off as she looked into the recovering room window to see the sleeping Azatera, a Gordadine. Well, half by our understanding. Nevertheless, a boon given to us through the chances of discovery by our judge. Focus returned to Dakota. Be aware, though, others may not like her becoming a postman. You must protect her and train her. Me? You want me to train and protect her? Dakota asked bluntly. I already started protecting her instead of killing her, she said softly, not meaning to cut as deep as she did. So this is a punishment. That's rich. Dakota scoffed, crossing his arms. Do watch your tone, Wolf. I am but the representative, not the decision maker. The dragonkin held him in her gaze for a moment as Dakota realized she was getting a message telepathically. I do apologize, but yes, this is a form of punishment for doing the right thing. She hung her head slightly before looking back into his eyes. You will do well to learn this lesson. People will be mad at you for doing this as you already But ultimately, regardless of that, she said, handing him a sealed note with a waxed sigil of the lead judge on it, he approves. Every day you succeed is another form of proof that you have made the right call in sparing your life that day, Jared Howell. You continue to prove him right. She waited for Dakota to take the note before she held up her hand for the Tech Mage Knights to begin their leave. And Dakota, she asked, dusting off her top as she put a cloak back over her shoulders. Make sure you do read this time. He gets upset when his favorite one doesn't read his notes. They get a bit windy, Dakota shrugged, standing aside to let the Tech Knights resume their positions. I'm sure you understand this after all, considering he is your grandfather. Not many of the judge's representatives were kin to them, let alone direct descendants of them. It could create favoritism, among other issues. Dakota wasn't exactly privy to the knowledge outside of his first few interactions directly with the judges, but ever since his augmentation, his becoming of being a postman, his first time rising through the ranks, her father often did message him. Nicely done, chum. Is it comfy? I made a mistake. Your grandfather often did message him. Dakota found it slightly endearing, but also odd that this judge seemed to treat him like a surrogate son. Dakota wasn't exactly that special. Surrogate grandson. Dakota wasn't exactly that special, was he? Dakota had considered how many other attempts by the Arcane Regent super soldiers that ended up with them in the postman's room. It wasn't a lot, to be fair, but the amount of times was alarming. Each time, each time one was shot down for the project, they were put into the postman. Something there wasn't exactly sitting right with the werewolf, but he had nothing else to go on for. Any other source of foul play. Still, anything else, ma'am? Yes, as she turned to leave. Do well to make sure Erie isn't acting ill. We are aware of her thirst for finishing what she started. Representative pulled the cloak's hood over her eyes, or over her head. We've got her on other assignments, so do let us know if she gets distracted and reaches out to you. It has an AI cat, but that's TikTok. Oh, that's odd that it has an AI cat on it. Either way. How's it? Oh, it's almost 7:30. Balls. I need to I keep overestimating my reading speed. I understand Dakota would eventually let them know if she did. But knowing her and how she was, it would probably go poorly for him if he tattled on her right away. As it is, so be. Postman deliver justice. Dakota returned to looking into Azatera's window as the representative and her escort marched away. Dakota was going to have his hands full soon. Alright. I know we still got a little bit to read, but I do unfortunately need to get going here. 4 more pages to read, 5, 6. Yeah, we got a lot. You're at page. We got 6 more pages to read. If it wasn't for the fact it was already 7:30, I would consider reading the rest of these pages, but I do need to get going. I'm not sure. I can change scene here. I'm not sure if we're going to be excuse me. I'm not sure if we're going to be streaming tomorrow, as my mom will be leaving for a trip on the 6th. So I might be going over to my parents' house tomorrow night to have a dinner stuff with them after work. So no plans on streaming tomorrow. If things change, I'll let you all know, but don't plan on a stream happening tomorrow. Um, but yeah, other than that, I do hope you all have a good night. I hope you guys are enjoying the Arcane Chronicles as much as I am working on it. So yeah, we won't be streaming tomorrow, but to make up for it, I do plan on going live again on Thursday, unless of course I end up working overtime. But I don't know if that's going to happen this week. But I'll keep you all posted as best as I can if it does. And either way, though, I really do appreciate you guys being here. I do hope you all have a good night. Thank you guys for stopping in. It really means a lot for me with you guys being here, even if you're just lurking. Thank you guys so much. I think the next time we stream, unless you guys want, I might play some video games. Otherwise, we'll just we'll finish going over the rest of this, and then we'll actually start the outlines for chapters 4 through 6. And then yeah, I think with that all though, I got nothing more else to add right now. If you guys have anything, of course, I don't know where you can send me messages at unless you already have me on Discord, but video gaming will return soon. So, but for now, thank you guys oh so very much for being here. I hope you all have a great night, and I will catch you guys next time. Take care, everybody. Bye.